to share your expertise with folks. So happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the first of several events that we're going to be having as part of a series that David has entitled Stop Using AI: From Efficiency to Effectiveness Through Collaboration. And it was interesting. I just got an email maybe 5 minutes ago from Provost Riley Tillman, and he said, wait a minute, was it supposed to say start using AI? And I said, no, this was very intentional that Dr. Macon is helping us rethink our relationships with AI in higher education. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Macon. He's a professor of criminal justice and criminology. He's also the director of the Complex Social Interaction Laboratory here at WSU. And I'm just overjoyed that he's willing to share his expertise and help us think more about AI and our relationships with it. So turn it over to you, David.
Thank you. No, I'm incredibly excited to be here. We did a summer series and had a lot of questions, and I was fortunate to meet with a lot of people to set up local AI and to explore some of the tools. So really excited here. This is going to be a little different. So for those of you that joined over the summer, you're going to see this looks very different because I've taken some time and I've really rethought how we should be thinking about AI in higher ed. So yeah, when we're trying to come up with a title for the series, I kept thinking, well, what am I reading? What am I seeing? And almost everything is, we're treating it as a tool. And so one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to demystify that. We're going to start to change the language we use. What you will not get in here, let me just set this up. You will not get a perfect prompt. I have a whole set. We're going to talk about prompting. Everyone is willing to sell you a course, or you can read about the perfect prompt. And if you use this, you're going to get, it just doesn't work like that. Right? So we're going to do some level setting, talk more about expectations. One of the things I'm really excited about is just, this isn't about humanizing the technology. It's about thinking about it as a partner. And when you partner with someone, right, you don't expect them to get it right the very first time, right? And I think the way that we use this is, by and large, we treat it as a tool, something that can automate what we do. And that's what we're going to spend today working on. There is a fair amount of reflection points in here. So we're going to post all of these. Let me go back quick, because I know if I put it up, then you start reading it. So we're going to post all of these. These were created in Gamma. That is one of the tools we're going to explore. Again, not about just teaching you how to use a tool, because the tools themselves are going to change. They're evolving. New ones are coming out. Old ones are being replaced and appreciated. So we're going to spend time thinking about how can I build, right, an approach to collaboration, right? So regardless of the tools that are created, right, that we're going to be able to collaborate with them to achieve, these kind of mutual goals. So again, we'll post all these slides for you. There's a lot there, and there's a fair amount at the end that I reserved because I just know we wouldn't have time for it. Okay. So as these tools started coming out, I started meeting with a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends. And this is, one of the areas that I teach on, right? So we've always taught technology as a tool. And so the grad class I just taught was about technology and public safety. And I inundated them with all the research that we have, all of our models for evaluating technology. And we walked away with technology as a tool. It's designed to do these 5 things. And then I took a step back and I thought, I'm missing something, right? I just spent an entire semester teaching my graduate students how to think about technology as a tool, how to evaluate it. And then the reality is, here's what I see in our research, right? We almost always think of it as, if we can use this tool to become more efficient, we can do more, right? And so that's it. That's all it is. It's like, can we become more efficient, right? Can we do things faster, right? And the reality is, if it does us no good if we do more, right? But fundamentally, we end up doing less, right? It's less meaningful, right? And that's the paradox we're going to spend, the next 60 minutes going through, is looking at how we can use these tools to collaborate. So it's not about simply doing more in less time. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what I almost always get. Can it help me grade papers? I really cannot tell you a person I've ever met with on this topic as a faculty member that this wasn't the first thing they wanted to know, right? And okay, I get it, right? Like there are things that are frustrating. There are things that just take up a lot of our time. But if you think about it, if it can help me grade 200 and I can do so very quickly and somewhat, let's say, accurately, then what stops us from simply adding more and more to it, right? As opposed to thinking through, what can I learn from these papers that I might be missing, right? What are the concepts? What are the content? What are the themes? This whole idea that there is a wealth of knowledge built into these tools, and I said tools, partners, even I'm having a hard time with it. And so this is where it gets to this kind of critical question. And these reflection prompts, some we'll do, some we won't do. But the first thing I want everyone to think about is, we almost always, how can I use AI to do more? Whereas where you're seeing this kind of consensus happen is, how can I use AI to do something that's more meaningful, right? What's worth doing, what's worth putting my time and my effort in to do something better. So as opposed to just, what can I do faster? What can I do more efficiently? Right? It's what can I learn from this entire process? So this is where we're at, right? It's the questions that we would ask were, all right, I need you to grade these 10 essays, right? Or 100 essays. I need you to summarize these papers. I need you to look at this syllabus. I need you to update it. Whereas the goal after today's first workshop is to take a step back and think about, okay, for these papers, can you help me understand the patterns and how my students are thinking about a given topic, right? When we're looking at maybe Research Rabbit, or we're looking at SciSpy, we're going to look at, okay, what are these connections that I'm not seeing, right? And then lastly, with course design, as opposed to go through and edit and update, as opposed, take a step back and think about what am I missing, or what assumptions am I making? Do my course learning objectives align with my course assignments? Have I allocated enough time? And you think, well, how does it know the time? This is where the collaboration comes in, right? So again, we're not just going to focus on the speed. We're going to focus on changing our entire philosophy. And it does take work. It is so much easier to say, create a rubric for me, than it is to say, review this rubric and let's have a discussion on these given aspects of the rubric. All right. Okay. So for those of you that were over the summer, we spent a lot of time talking about this is not about automating. And I said, well, it's about enhancing. And then I took a step back and realized, no, the tools have changed. They're capable of doing so much more that this really has to be about, how can we co-create, right? And this is the shift that I want to spend really today on, right? Which is, if we always approach these tools as they are automating some aspect of my job or who I am, they're automating. That's a first level utilization. It sees it as a tool and treats it only as a tool. Right? When we're enhancing, we're taking what we are an expert on and we're asking it to help us just get a little bit better at it. But what the goal should be, and we're going to look at some outputs of this, is about how we co-create, right? How we're able to take our own knowledge, our own expertise, pair that with a wealth of just knowledge scraped from the entire, internet. Published works. If you saw Anthropic, right, just paid out $1.5 billion to authors, right, because it scraped all of their literary works. Right? We're not going to be able to address all the biases that are here, but we will spend some time talking about them. So we're going to be thinking about co-creation. Okay, so first thing I want to ask you a question, because there it is, right? This is the reflection prompt, and I would love to hear from folks on going from automate, to enhance, to collaborate. So the reflection prompt, would love, feel free to type or unmute, is how are you currently using or thinking about AI? Are you thinking about from automating, enhancing, or collaborating?
It helps me to think differently.
Think differently. Kind of challenge some of your assumptions.
Find some blind spot I have.
Okay. That's a great way of using it, right? Other folks?
For me, I've been using it in both research and teaching, and it is a good critical partner. Yeah, I echo the last comment about finding blind spots and also helping me check assumptions. For example, I give it a set of exam questions and say, ask it any of the questions that could make students confused, right? And it's really good at identifying those confusing points. That because I'm the subject matter expert, I am blindsided. So yeah.
No, absolutely. Alex.
First thing that came to mind, never mind using it, but in enhance and collaborate, at some point, how do we deal with intellectual property, which is what part of that work is mine and what part does it belong to the AI company? And other issues like, I mean, AI keeps being trained and I'm essentially participating in the training without consent and without reimbursement. So those things come to mind reading your approach to dealing with AI.
Well, Alex, I think it's one of the things that is at the end here, folks that want to review all of the slides, is offline. So that is something that we talked about over the summer series, and I helped a few folks build out their own local solutions. But I think that's a really incredibly important point, right? The data that you put in, if you don't go into your privacy settings and change those, you're contributing, right? So your chat conversations, what you're creating, right, is able to be trained and used to improve the model. So one way of dealing with that is, well, creating your own local solution. And there are plenty of tools that are out there. Over the summer, we spent time looking at Ollama as an example. Ollama has become much easier to use now. You can simply download it as a standalone program, find the model that you would like to use and run it. And it's entirely 100% offline, which is, for those that have that privacy concern, what a great way. You take it, instead of being online, it's on your local machine and it's entirely self-contained. It doesn't interact with the internet in any way unless you would like it to. And if it does, it would be through browsing the web for you, right? So that would be one example. Anyone else? All right, well.
I'm a student, so I kind of use it a bit differently. I had an online class that I had to take over this summer, and it was about logic. And I wasn't actually expecting it to work super well, but it, like, on certain questions that I couldn't figure out myself, it helped kind of like outline like ways to solve it, or like which logic problems to use, which was helpful because I didn't have anyone to ask for help around at that time. So that's one way that I tried to use it.
No, that's a really great way, right? I think that's a common way of people being able to use it, right? Which is help you break something down into smaller pieces. Next time. Okay, so let's always do, like, I had an elephant in the background, that didn't work quite well. So let's just talk about the reality here, right? This is everything, I shouldn't say everything, but from the summer series, I just took, what we had talked about, and then really what the summer series and what this, series of workshops are designed to do. And those are legitimate fears, right? I see that a lot in, particularly development, right? Which is, well, it's getting really good at coding in Python and coding in Rust. So if it can just replace me, then what value do I have, right? And I think in higher ed, this is even more maybe real is not the word I'm looking for. I think it's more critical for us because we're the, academia is built on us being the knowledge experts, right? It's like we've spent decades studying a discipline, right? We are disciplinary experts. And so I get the fear is there, right? It's, if I use it, does it diminish my knowledge, right? Who I am as a scholar, right? If I need it to help me solve a problem. And I think that's because so many of the ways we think of this is we're thinking of it like a calculator, right? We're thinking about it, as this tool again, as opposed to it's not going to replace all the aspects of what it means to be a professor, right? What it means to be an educator, the connections that we have, right? Our ability to empathize, our ability to understand a student's context, right? And so I do want to take a moment here and just pause and, which of these fears most resonate with you or your colleagues even? Where is that apprehension come from?
Can I tell a story?
Absolutely.
So a colleague of mine, Dan Dolan in shock physics, has a close relative who works at some company that's doing LiDAR drone stuff. So they hired a computer science student from an Ivy League school as a programmer and asked the student to do some programming project. And it was taking a long time. So his friend went to the student and said, "Why is this taking so long?" The student stared him in the face and said, "I don't think this is a solvable problem. The AI can give me no hints about how to solve this." It was a 5-hour programming project for someone to know what they're doing. This is what's coming out of universities now, from the top universities. That's a big concern for me. Because when these people are designing airplanes, when they're designing things that my life depends on.
Sorry, you didn't quite make it.
Yeah. So, I feel we, especially as a university that's slightly under the radar relative to, big schools that are being attacked kind of right now, we maybe have a chance to attack this right away and make sure that we're producing students who know how to think beyond AI, using the AI, as you say, as a creative resource and helping them be better, but realizing the risks of relying on AI. And this is happening. I mean, this is one example that came to me last week, a couple of weeks ago, but I mean, I'm sure this is happening all over the company now. There's going to be a huge fallback when companies realize, this is what's going on, but that's a huge concern.
No, without a doubt. I think you see that in insecure code production, right? So I have a colleague that now out of a job, entry-level programmer, right? So we're outsourcing all their entry-level programmers to AI, right? And then the question then becomes, well, how does one become a senior? You become a senior by being an entry-level, a junior, and you learn and you grow. So then the question was, well, who becomes the senior? Who are our senior programmers if there are no entry programmers, right? And you're right. I think this is part of what we're. Yes.
I just want to add something. Of course, help as a student. AI helped me a lot in different ways as a student. But I would add a comment. Sometimes lower the confidence to submit any work from my personal work without checking if it's correct or not. So it seems like it's the tool that will tell me my work is 100 correct or it's a quality for graduate student or not before I submit it. So it's hard, but sometimes lower our confidence of our own work.
But that is you are starting thinking yourself and then checking, but you could also approach it like, do this for me. And then you hand it in as is without you checking, without you critically thinking. And that's the problem. That people use it the other way around. They say, oh, can you write me this program? And then you get an answer like, oh, AI can't come up with an answer, so there must not be a solution. I think it's perfectly fine the way you use it. It was like, okay, can you tell me, am I on the right track? And then you are checking it again whether it's telling you the right answer, because sometimes it's wrong too. Still,
right.
So this is sort of it's a colleague. It's a colleague who is untrustworthy, often wrong, and has no sense of morality.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
I mean, it's good. Those types of colleagues are great for getting creative ideas, but they're not great for relying on. So
Well,
it
I
comes.
had an answer one time truthfully. I had a student hand me in something that was obviously not written by that student. And I asked AI, did you write this? And it said yes, because it doesn't have the human traits.
Although I'm not sure how reliable that is now. I'm very curious how reliable. It used to not be very reliable for determining whether things were generated by AI. I think that's probably getting better.
We'll talk about that.
There was there's a good way. In fact, they're using it kind of for fraud prevention. A way to detect AI images. There's a program that basically it was kind of selling itself to like insurance companies and stuff like that. But basically, that you would put in an image and detect like if was produced by AI or not.
The sad part is then AI will get better at it.
It's a constant fight.
It will be cyclical.
It is. Alex.
It's great. Yeah.
I think that's a perfect segue. I hate to contradict my esteemed colleague Judy there, but one feature, what I hear lately is the more people know how AI works, the current AI, the less they use it. And some of the things we discussed so far, like confabulation, what are they called? Susceptibility to adversarial attacks, turns out they're features of the system, they're not bugs. And this particular version of AI, which is the DeepNet version, just cannot avoid them. That's why I said the more people know how this version of AI works, the less they use it because of those issues.
No.
And the less people know, they start anthropomorphizing, as we usually do, and start thinking which is a bad idea. Anyway, the limitations of current AI should be upfront with everybody trying to use this technology, because they are serious issues.
Yes, well said. And so we'll talk about the bias as well. I think anthropomorphizing the technology as a partner is more of thinking about it as, if we can explain to our students a tool as a partner, you don't trust everything your partner says, right? You don't ask your partner to write the paper and then turn the paper in as if you did it yourself, right? So it's more about reframing how we think about the use of a tool in a collaborative sense of what we're able to accomplish together, because it sets a parameter around how we already exist. We already collaborate, we already work with partners, we already have a social contract in terms of how we treat each other when we engage in partnership. And that's really the idea here, is how can we adjust the narrative while also understanding the limitations of the technology. We will not be able to solve all the problems here. It's the same reason that you don't see what is the perfect prompt that you can use every single time to get an answer, because it's not possible. But we also have to understand exactly all the ways in which these tools are evolving. And we're going to look at some of the outputs that can be created to just set a standard. See, this is where we're at with the tools. And then for us to think through how best we can use them. So nothing that we're going to look at across the workshops is going to tell you, please use it this way, do this, do that, don't use it this way. It's a collaborative journey that you have to have on your own to figure out how you want to use a given tool. Over the 6 workshops, we're going to look at a variety of tools and different approaches to see how it best works for you, right? To better communicate with your students, to better have, improve your pedagogy, to get creative, to be more accessible with your students. So that's our path today. So real high level, because I want to get to the examples. As Alex said, yes, right? It's trained on billions and trillions of parameters. Yes, it predicts the next word in a series of words and given context. They're quite amazing, and they get better, and we still try to learn from it, and we still try to figure out, well, what's happening inside of that black box. right? So I want to get a little bit faster here. We've been talking about all of this. So for those of you over the summer, we did what happens when I had a good conversation, and I want to change this a little bit. So what I did is I just wanted a simple question. I just said, we are, right? And it was fascinating how often the answer would come back as Penn State, because that's the chant, right? So my undergrad is at Penn State, and so it's we here, right? We are Penn State. And then, of course, you see there, you're a diehard Washingtonian, and you hear go. And what was the first thing ChatGPT said? It was go Huskies. Right? I know, blasphemy. There's bias in this, right? It's trained a certain way. I'd love to know how much they paid for that. I kid, right? Now, I say all that because this is really, I did that. And then I went back and, I was having dinner with some friends, and we were just kind of talking about the summer series. And we laughed about this. And, I had a friend that very aptly said, you turn it into a party trick, right? And he was like, we've spent globally over $200 billion on these technologies, right? And so, yes, it was funny, it was humorous, but think of all that we could have learned from that. And so I went back and I said, well, yeah, that's actually interesting, which is, I'm a social scientist. Yes, my training is in technology, machine learning, but I'm a social scientist. And I started thinking through, like, what are the things that we could have done with that? As opposed to saying we are or go, I could have learned and asked and had a conversation and learned something that I might not know as in depth. Now, is this the answer it gives me? No, but it allows me to have that conversation that might spark the creativity for me to go out and learn more, which is what the growth mindset is all about. And that's what we're striving for here in higher ed, right? The goal is, yes, to teach people discipline-specific knowledge, but fundamentally, we're trying for everyone to leave here with a growth mindset. And if someone can achieve a growth mindset through a conversation, something they're interested in learning more about, that they can then go and explore at a deeper level, then I'd say we accomplished our goal. And we've used this collaborative opportunity to achieve that, right? And I was really fascinated, like, how can those 4 words, I mean, you just hear it, we are, and people just immediately say it. Just like when we do go Cougs at the end, like it all of a sudden unites everyone, right? So I was kind of fascinated on the sociological and psychological impact of that. Okay, so we've spent some time talking about bias. And again, I'm not trying to run through all of this, but these will be made available. You can dive in more deeper. You can email me anytime, and I'm happy to work through those. But I want to spend some time just letting you pick where we go. So I'm just going to jump to that because this is where we're going to go. All right. So we do not have time to go through everything in depth because this first workshop is just give you that orientation shift, and let's look at a few. So I couldn't figure out, and I did ask Gemma to help me, but I couldn't figure out how to add like a voting button. So we're going to figure this out. You can pick 2 to 3 examples, and we will spend time diving into those. So research and discovery, knowledge and reflection, creation and expression, or if you want me to do all of them, we won't go as deep, but at least you'll see all of them and how they can be used. Do we have a preference?
I have a question about those black box.
That's on the TV.
Is it on your screen?
No, it's on Zoom too.
I don't have it.
Oh.
It's on Zoom.
It's on Zoom, yeah. I don't.
So it's something on your screen that's blocking those. You're sharing?
I am sharing.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like, is Zoom like other annotation features or things that might
I
be
do
able-
not.
Okay.
Creation, research, and
It's
discovery.
okay. It hasn't ruined the presentation.
Thank you, Erica.
David, do you want me to put a quick poll?
Please and thank you. If it doesn't take too much
The
time.
people are voting in chat.
I see lots of that.
Yeah, let me do it really quick. Let me do a poll.
I mean, we might very well have time to do all of them too. We try to get through there a little bit quicker, but we might have.
Only one here.
All right. Well, folks are doing that. I do want to look at. I want to show you this one real quick because this.
Don't go away. I
brand
have
new.
to write it down. Oh.
I know. Just real quick. I was going to do. just to show you how fast. So for those of you in the summer series, you saw the podcast feature, right? That Notebook LM had. That was pretty fascinating, and people ask a lot of questions on that. So in the latest iteration, what they rolled out is a video. So this is what we call a one-shot. Basically, I provided a reference document. In this case, it was our semi-annual report that we had to file with the legislature. And it's just that. It's a semi-annual report, all the things you expect to be in that. Not a lot of people want to sit down and read the semi-annual report. So we have, Notebook LM can do lots of interesting stuff, right? And again, later on, we're going to focus on these tools in a lot more detail. But this is pretty standard, right? It takes concepts and builds you out your concept map. It also has the podcast. This is the brand new feature. So again, reference document to video.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're
Give it a second. I was trying to make it big screen so everybody will see that. There we go. We won't play all of it.
Are you sharing your sound too?
I am.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really pioneering system out of Washington State. It's designed to completely change how we look at public safety, and it all boils down to tackling one of the toughest challenges in policing, the data itself. So let's start with a really big question. How do you actually measure policing? For decades, the go-to answer has been, raw numbers, arrests, incidents, tickets. But those numbers, they just don't tell the whole story. In fact, they often leave out the most critical parts. And that gets us right to the heart of the issue. It's a problem of context. Trying to understand something as incredibly complex as police use of force just by counting incidents, well, it's kind of like looking at a game's final score without knowing how a single basket was made. You see the outcome, but you miss the entire story of how we got there. And that's really the difference, isn't it? We're so used to getting just a simple count of events, but the full story, that includes everything. What led to that 911 call in the first place? What was the reality on the ground when officers showed up? And what happened to everyone involved?
So this, again, one shot, provided the source material, right? And that's a great idea, feeding your own articles to it, right? And we have an entire team that creates videos for us, right? We have statistics students, we have math and stats, education folks, and their whole job is to create videos that the public can review and understand. We demystify a lot of statistics, right? Well, this was really helpful for them, right? Because we were able to take this material, and we also have one where we took their script, and they were able to see what this could produce, some of the gaps that were there. Thank you, Erica, right? And now imagine being able to take lecture material, right? Or being able to take something that's really challenging for students and to be able to put it in a podcast form or a video, right? Yes, you still have to review it, right? You still are the expert. Again, if we treat it like a partner, I don't ask my partner to create something with me, and then I just give it to someone else, right? I'm going to take the due diligence to go through it and to verify that it's accurate.
Can you go back to the previous slide, Eric?
Yes, sorry, Eric. Here you go.
Here it's coming. Hold on. Folks in Zoom land, you can vote. I tried to capture as much as I could without David's slide in front of me.
Apologies.
That's okay, but you can vote. You can select more than one. So at least this gives David an opportunity. And David, I'll send these results to you afterward.
Thank you.
Can we reach consensus in the room of one that we want?
Sure.
I like the notebook.
The notebook? That was. All right, we will.
So there's no AI that could generate the poll from the slide yet?
I probably is. I just ran out of time.
That would be useful. Do you use these podcasts?
Yes.
So how do you, like, if I'm listening to that, I know I can't trust anything. So without going back and reading the article myself, I don't know what I can trust. And I worry that this simplified presentation is going to put wrong ideas in my mind. Like, I just can't trust it. So, I mean, Anne's idea of checking your own research is sort of good, but do you, like, how do you use it?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, so we have a lot of material that's very dense and complicated. And so for us, it's not saying, okay, here's this one piece and then do this one shot and then I post it or I review it. It's in a truly collaborative way, which is taking what are the most important elements in our case.
So you're using
public.
this for stuff that you know?
Yeah.
Trying to generate, yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
You're not using this to actually like read documents that you haven't.
No. This is trying to get away from this, like get it and summarize it so I can just watch and consume it.
Yes.
It's using a collaborative process to create those, that we can make those available to students. And in our case, we need to make them available to the public, which is again, demystifying statistics and data analytics so that they get it, they understand it.
But are you not worried that your students will fall back on this as a shortcut?
I mean,
because it's a lot easier.
It is a lot easier. And I think this is, again, this is our job is to figure out how do we integrate the tools in, but you're absolutely right. Some people always take the path of least resistance, right? And we've seen that in math, right? Which is I could go in, I could put the math prompt in and I could do it for me and show me every single step, right? We know that can happen. It's always been able to happen. But we can also think through how can I use that process and give something different to you, which is to explain it, to walk us through it, to whiteboard it out. Again, it's
And I mean, we had that when calculators first were used. I mean, people would say, "Oh, the calculator said so; it has to be right." It's like, well,
there's a fundamental difference, though. The people using calculators are already technically trained to some extent.
No, but this.
Whereas AI is now like anyone can go and make that podcast and say, "Oh, now I understand."
It's fine. It's definitely it's a more elaborate tool. So the problems are going to be more elaborate. But I mean, it's still this like the thinking student will use a calculator and then still do a quick analysis doesn't answer make sense, and the student who doesn't think will just say, "Oh, the calculator said so, so this must be the right answer."
So I hope that's true. But if you read the New York Times article about 3 weeks ago, they're saying that even the best students are now falling back. They're using this to do less work, and they're suffering because of it.
Oh, but I think it's going to swing back and forth.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, I think it's part of and Eric, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that's the idea of the series was to look at the different tools and the ways that we can use them and adjust our pedagogy slightly.
Yeah.
Right? To recognize if this tool exists and they can use this tool, what are some alternative ways that I might be able to assess their learning?
I think that slightly is not appropriate. We have to adjust our styles dramatically or we're in deep trouble.
Yes, we do have to make that adjustment. So I'll give you an example at the graduate level, right? I do oral exams, right? The ability for students, right, to,
absolutely.
If you can, there's one thing to be able to write it out. There's another to be able to explain it. And the way, I taught my graduate students, like, this is really hard. And I tell them, this is the reality. The vast majority of what I produce, unfortunately, is not written. I spend most of my time talking to people and communicating these ideas. So what do I need them to be able to do effectively is to communicate their ideas in this particular way. So when we look at the different tools, it's not to say that, well, this tool can make it so much more efficient and it can do it for them and they're not going to learn as much, or take a step back and think, how could I use these tools to improve, to enhance what they're learning, right? And I cannot see the chats. I am so sorry. So if they are there and I missed something, please do let me know.
There's some side conversations about hallucinations.
I do like those.
Yeah, I do have a question about, the title being like not just using it more efficiently and then creating podcasts from a prompt or even something that we wrote, creating these podcasts and videos. What is the benefit other than just saving our own time and resources? I guess also where I tie this in is like I have, you know, like ethical, moral, as we all do, like questions of myself that I'm trying to figure out, like what use cases are worth me saving, you know, 20 minutes, 6 hours, like where do I draw that line of the massive environmental impact, declining, just like higher level thinking, all of that. Um, yeah, do you have like more examples of using like the podcaster video, or are we just like copy and pasting our own work to save time?
No,
That's not really a straightforward question. I apologize, but it's just like kind of where my mind is going, and I'm hung up on it before like, you know, continuing, I don't know, continuing to move on.
no, I think that's when we do a deep dive into those technologies, I think that's the big conversation, right? Is yes, it could, you know, the example I have was just a one shot, right? Like this is what happens when you give it this material and this is what it can create. Whereas the way that we've begun to use those is thinking through what could be complicated to convey, right? Being able to review in this case, you know, we have entire scripts that we write out before we produce a video and looking for gaps. Where could we add more examples here? What could be more useful? Again, trying to think through of the collaborative session where the goal is this, and I'm using a process of collaboration to get to that end goal. If someone's end goal is simply, I would like a video that my students will watch or a podcast that they'll listen to while they're at the gym, then yes, that's one way you can do it. You could absolutely review it, put your stamp on it and say it's all accurate and let them go out and watch it. Yes, that's absolutely one way of doing it. The other way is to take a step back and think through what are the gaps that are here? What are the other types of examples that I could use? What are things that maybe I don't know a lot of pop culture, but would get a student to lean in a little bit more by, I have a colleague that does bunnies, right? It's like through everything, it's bunnies. And the students lean in, it's statistics, but they get interested, they get excited. Again, there's no perfect way to use it, right? Instead, it's what's the outcome that I'm trying to achieve? And how can I use this process to get there in a way that does allow us to be more effective at what we're trying to communicate, we're trying to translate. Because at the end of the day, if we're only using these tools to do something that we could do on our own, then we're just outsourcing, right? And that's fundamentally not how we should see these technologies. And you're right, the environmental impact, the impact that it's having on communities is real. And it's good that we're having more research that looks at and explores what their environmental impact is. But we can't answer those pretty large pressing questions as a university. But what we can do is figure out ways in which some of these technologies allow us to better communicate knowledge to our students and assess their ability to obtain and retain that knowledge. So I see a question on, so we had SciSpace and Research Rabbit. So we'll do Research Rabbit first. I think it's one in which I'm really excited about. There are in this presentation, again, we'll post a link for everybody. There's more on the collaborative, like how to use some of these. I just know we wouldn't have all the time to be able to do it. So I just made sure I put some placeholders in there with some additional data. So the way Research Rabbit works is, think of it like if you use Google Scholar, right? And you can look at the cite by, right? You click cited by, and it shows you everybody that it's cited, right? And it's, again, is it perfect? No, right? The idea is you're going to check lots of different sources. But what's really nice about this is you can create a collection, right? And with the collection, you can then start mining the sites, but you can also look at the references they have and what is adjacent to it. So here's just a real basic one. We're doing a paper on COVID's impact on mental health calls. And yeah, I know. So here it takes.
There was a question for you. What was the collaborative you just mentioned?
The collaborative, in the slides, so I have some examples for each of these different technologies. I have at the inside of the slide, I have those that are specific to how to think about this in a collaborative way for each of these tools. So just as a way to kind of prime the pump, if you will. So with this, yes, you could say, show me all of these, right? But what's really helpful is that it can make suggestions based on the theme, the topic, the concept, and you can continue to drill down as far as you would like to see, okay, well, here are these big groups of citations. This is kind of the scholarship, and then see how over time it evolves. So one of the things that we've used this for a few times is to look at gaps in the literature, right? Because once I have this kind of knowledge map of what's out there and who's writing on what topics, what the networks are, what the relationship between the materials are, I can directly use this to help me identify gaps, right? In our case, we're doing a project on biometric measures of stress. And so we have some very specific monitors, and we just ask officers to wear them. Well, we wanted to know, well, who's done this? How have they done it? And what particular challenges have they encountered? This helped us find all those papers. But then we were able to take a step back and look at, by then, using SciSpace, is you can take all of that material, all those papers. I have no idea, it's just slow. And you can bring those in specifically with SciSpace and have a conversation about your research. So not just, yes, can it summarize? Yes, it could, right? You could say, please summarize this paper. But you can also think about it again as a collaboration, and to start with, what are 2 or 3, like I'm thinking about a theory paper, what are 2 or 3 theories that are not discussed in this paper? So instead of saying, tell me all of the theories that are, I want to focus on the things that are not. Yes, there are certainly some challenges, because you just made me immediately look at the one that says paraphraser, which is, here's all this great work. And oh, by the way, here's how you can help me paraphrase it. Here's how you can detect if it's AI generated. Here, I can actually work with you to help write it. So yes, these tools are out. And again, we're not, I guess to borrow it, like we're not putting the genie back in. Fundamentally, we have to figure out how can we work with our students in an ethical and responsible way for using the tools. Yes.
That's one of the things, like when you talked about the podcast, for example, is like, how do I, from a consumer standpoint, know which things have been completely AI generated and then just pushed out for me to use, versus something like how you're describing something that's been AI generated, but you've also had influenced it, you've reviewed it, and how do you navigate that from a consumer side, I guess?
Well, for us, we always have an attribution, which is if you use it, you disclose that you used it. And I think that's a part that we collectively have to do, right? If I tell my students, if I've used Gamma to help improve my slides, I tell them that, right? Fundamentally, it's still my responsibility to say that I've evaluated this and this information is accurate. I think one of the worst things that we can do is put a video up. So if Notebook LM didn't have that there, and I put that up and portrayed that as mine, that's deeply unethical, right? And if people can't distinguish, then you're right, then what is real, right? When everything is perceived to be false, what is real? This is one of those situations in which I need to say, I've used this technology. But you're seeing a reluctance for people to say that because of how it might make them appear, right?
But the question though also comes, when it's out there, how do you detect whether it went through this process or whether if there is no disclaimer on it, then how do you now It's not AI, completely AI generated without any kind of checks and balances.
Yeah, no, I think that's where, unfortunately, regulation is always behind, always. My first book was on forensics, and we didn't start implementing the Reno recommendations till 25 years after they were made. That's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow.
With students, oral exams, but I don't know how to scale that up for undergrad.
To 400.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be some way of doing it with sort of some pyramid structure. But
I mean, I think there's some, yeah, I mean, as we get through, there's some more interesting use cases and that I find interesting for students, which is to be able to have a conversation. Google AI Studio lets you do that. You can stream a conversation. And again, I'm just giving you like the top level of kind of what exists, and then we'll go real deep. But think about how that could be helpful, right? Which is having a student have this conversation on a given topic, or I have a colleague that I talked about before. She used it for helping students practice interviewing skills, right? So I had, in this case, Googled it, right? It had Google act as an interviewer, and then they were the interviewee, and they had the ability, it'll take a second to catch up, and you could have that conversation, right? Like, that could be a pretty helpful way for a student to be able to practice. We have some students in our program that are using it to improve their English proficiency, just communicating, right? It's, again, the more that you can communicate, the more you can practice. So what a great way to sit down and to have that conversation in a different language. In this case, right, they're trying to just improve their English conversation skills.
do you know if there's ways of turning off the anthropomorphizing side of it? Like where it comes back and says, good job. Yes, you did. That's very good. That's absolutely right. And then you say, well, actually, it's wrong. Yes, I was wrong. It's completely wrong. You did it. But is there a way of turning that off? Because that's extremely
yes, you could. Yeah, you can write your own parameters, and put that in. And so every time, so you have model parameters, and so you can basically create instructions. Kind of easy way of thinking.
So as part of the prompt, basically.
No, pre-prompt. Yes, okay. Yeah. So basically, there's a.
It's a prompt, but it's pre-prompt.
Well, that's one way to do it. Another way you could think about doing it is like pretend, give it a persona that you want it to assume, and say, talk to me as though I am a knowledgeable colleague. You don't need to reassure me. You can just give me things straight. And you can make that as a template for yourself to put in, like at the beginning of every chat, if you really want to change how it.
I'm not so worried about me, but I am worried about students who start relying.
That you won't have power.
I mean, I had a student who gave me, a book this big of the conversation they had with the AI, which was creative stuff came out of it, but you could see that it's almost becoming a replacement for human interaction. That's pretty scary.
I mean, agents are pretty, like, one of the things, if we do get to, and folks want to do a deeper dive into offline LLMs, we'll look at agents and how to use those. This one, I'm not a visual person in the sense that I don't have the ability to create flowcharts that are really pretty. I just know that I don't have that skill set, and I used to spend far too long. And so we needed to create one real quick, which was, I know, don't use it efficiency, but I just want to show you at a surface level, this was incredibly helpful because I took something that we needed to create into a flowchart, and without prompting, it was able to take and put all of that information in the CSV structure, the comma separator that I had, exactly how we needed it. Right. So in this case, yes, I used it as a tool. Right. And yes, the goal here is collaboration, but we do also have to realize the enhanced part. Enhancing means that by its very nature, it's enhancing my ability to do something.
Can you trust that all of the things that you put in appear here?
Yes.
You can. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the relevance is, but.
Can you tell us the context? How was that list generated?
Yes, so this is an example. We have to do mapping. So we are in the process of taking every single police department's event types, and we have to categorize those. So we were trying to create a visual to show the public on the process and all that has to happen. And so this is, if you put this in an Excel file, what you would see is—
I just want to know how that was generated.
Oh, this information?
Yeah.
This is directly out of an agency's file.
A police agency's
Yep.
file.
So we take, these are all their call types, and then we categorize those.
So that's the data they're getting.
Correct. That's the data, a small subset, very small subset. And we just wanted to create this flowchart. That's it.
Yeah, I just wanted to know.
Yep. Great question, Judy. But this was, I'm gonna snooze that real quick.
I'm so sorry. I'm gonna push back a little bit, and I'm sorry because this feels rude. I don't entirely agree with the idea that we shouldn't use these simply for the case of automating things or doing things faster or more efficiently. I don't think that's all we should do with it, but genuinely, if my use case is sometimes I will ask an AI to help me generate like a function of code, not an entire thing, like just this limited thing to do X task. I can verify it's doing it properly, and it will be able to do that and save me hours or days worth of work. For me, I feel like that is potentially worth the amount of time and energy saved to not have to do that. Coding is not a core part of my job. I'm not depriving myself too much of the opportunity to learn in that instance. I think it's okay to do things that make your work more efficient with these things, so long as you're being aware of, like we've said, the opportunity cost of taking the time to learn how to do the thing for yourself, and the environmental, ethical, social cost of what it takes to have a model and use it for that thing. That said, I don't know that I've heard a really clear example of a transformative, collaborative use of the AI yet so far today. I mean, we've talked about making podcasts, or videos. We still know how to do that. It just takes longer, using the humans. We can have conversations to discover gaps in our knowledge or get prompting things. We just have to have those with humans and not with the other thing. And if you find a knowledgeable colleague, they will also be a great person to bounce ideas off of. There's a real risk we are sort of losing the opportunity to get into those habits or learn those habits as a student, to be able to build those connections. And I, as a very introverted person, it's actually very tempting for me to want to rely more on putting it into the machine than actually speaking to another human and developing that type of collaborative skill. So yeah, my question is where are the real transformative things for the things that we could not do otherwise that we really want to think about?
No, that is outstanding. And I would say that the stop was the creative to get people in the door. But I think you're right. Being able to use it to automate some aspect, absolutely, right? If you can reduce the amount of time, and I've absolutely used it to clean or debug code, right? It simply is faster and it's better than the time that it would take for me to be able to do that.
Translation is fairly reliable and really good use. Yeah.
This is I know we have 2 minutes left, but let me get to that slide that has, okay. It should take a moment and then it will pop up. So two parts to the question, which is, okay, the automated part, and that's completely fine, right? The idea is that you have each of those three levels. We cannot and only think of these tools as that collaborative side, because that takes real effort. Again, if it's just like a partner, it takes a long time to establish a partnership to accomplish a given goal, right? But what we are able to do is to think through, and this is the setup for the going deeper, which is based on the feedback that you all have, we're going to take one or two tools or use cases. So this is what we're looking for from all of you, is what is your use case? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through the co-creation process in real time, right? In the sense that we're not just going to have a final product and tell you, well, here's all the steps that we took to get there. Instead, we're going to take the use case and take the tool, and we're going to document, just like you would think with, wow, why are we blanking on this? It would be, oh, wow. When I'm coding and I want to show you the specific pieces that I'm working on, in my head, it's not a notebook, it is, oh, that's embarrassing, it'll bug me. Now, it'll come back to me, But we're going to focus on the deep dive of a technology and use case, and we're going to go through the co-production process. But we'll also look at ways in which we can automate, ways in which we can enhance, and then we'll look at co-creation. But I will tell you, if you start out with the idea of just pure co-creation without fundamentally knowing what you are aiming to accomplish, you're going to spend a lot of time and have a real problem with a sunk cost fallacy.
So how do we get the link to this?
Erica, how will they get the link to all the material?
Ooh, that's a great question because I didn't ask for registrants. But I will work with, well, first of all, we will post this video on YouTube, and I'll drop that in the link in the chat really quickly. And then I imagine the link can be in the description of the YouTube channel. And then we'll just go ahead and update this on the Provost website, on our Teach website that's coming up. So lots of places. And then when we send out the announcement for the next series, we'll include a link to where you can find information. And people can just email me as well. So here's the YouTube in the chat. My name's Erica Offerdahl. You can email me directly, and you can look on the Provost website.
Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Look forward to learning more with you.
Can you hang on for just a little bit, Erica?
Sure. I'm going to stop recording.
David?